What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of The Creator Economy. I'm with Andres here. This kid is a killer. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yep. Good to talk to you, bro. A little bit about myself. In the past year, I went from being like a normal high school kid, 16 years old, going to parties, doing the normal stuff, to a year later, having ran a sales organization, doing $3.5 million a month in cash collection, training, managing, recruiting, all of it. And then now running a consulting business with my business partner, Yash, doing $70K a month profit, essentially.
Man, that's incredible, man. The numbers that you're doing, the work that you're doing is just really unheard of for a 16-year-old kid. What would you have to say for people that don't believe in what you're doing and they just don't believe the numbers? They think that you're just selling fluff and not really doing the things that you're doing. What would you have to say to that?
You live in a place that looks like this?
Yeah, we're
like people will be like, oh, your Rolex is rented. Oh, your penthouse is rented. Yeah, like, yeah, no shit. The watch isn't rented, but how much do you think it fucking costs to rent this place? It's not $1,000 a month.
man.
You get a
You just
Rolex,
moved
it's
into
not
a penthouse.
$1,000. Like,
Yeah.
it's
How much is the rent at the penthouse that you just moved into?
this one's $7.5 a month. I have three.
$7,500 a month. Some people don't even make that in a year, man. So
Yeah.
you must be doing something crazy. So let's get into your story, man. How you got into sales? What exactly were you selling? And yeah, just break down that story.
Well, that's very broad. Where do you want me to start?
So let's start from the beginning. You being that high school student, then transitioning into getting into sales. Start from there.
Yeah, so I was a normal high school kid, 16 years old, whatever. I grew up with, my brother was an addict. And so my parents put in a lot of time towards him, right? And like making sure he was taken care of, taking him to rehab or like therapy, like whatever it was. And so I grew up like relatively independently, right? Since I grew up a little bit more independent, like I learned to be mature at a much younger age. And I learned people and psychology at a much younger age because I always had to understand like, okay, what mood is my brother in or my family, whatever it is, right? Which I'm not saying I had a hard childhood whatsoever. I think I had a great childhood and I could not have had a better one because they wouldn't have put me in this position. But naturally in high school, because of how I grew up, I didn't fit in with everybody else. I wasn't the same. I just wasn't. I thought differently. I looked at things differently. I acted differently. But since all the people around me acted a certain way, I caught myself trying to fit in.
Okay.
And naturally, since I couldn't, I think the natural assumption, like you could be better than everybody else, but if you feel like you don't fit in, you feel like you're inferior. Naturally, that's a natural tendency. And so I had to come up with a way to go from like, I'm inferior, I feel inferior, to how can I be superior? How can I do more? How can I give more? How can I be more? And so at the beginning, that turned to sports for me. So I went into soccer. I would play 5 hours a day alone on a pitch on top of the team trainings. I would constantly be changing how I ate, changing my stretching, working on my ligaments, like everything, until eventually I got injured. And so I broke my two bones in my ulna and my radius straight through the middle. It was 180 degrees twisted backwards, and it got turned to the side. And so that put me out for 9 months. And my first game back, I break them both again, straight through the middle. Another 9 months.
That's crazy.
And
so
in
let's put a pause on that real quick. Mentally, in that moment where you kind of had the injury at first, you're working to get back into it, and then you get injured the very first game. Where were you at mentally?
I think I didn't want to believe it even. Like when I broke it the second time, I kid you not, I went home. As soon as it broke, I knew it was broken. Like I just did, but I did not want to believe it. And so it took me 3 days before I ever went to the doctor or the hospital because I was just hoping one day I would wake up and it would just be gone, away.
Yeah.
Which obviously never happened.
Yeah. You were hoping it was all a nightmare, all a dream.
Exactly. And so eventually I had to admit though, like this is my new reality. And that put me in a very dark place because I think humans are driven off of happiness. Men are driven off of progress. Naturally. Because in human psychology, progress equals happiness, not pleasure, happiness. And so for a man, you have to progress in order to feel that. For a woman, I think it's very different, and we can touch on that a little bit later. But naturally, because of that, since I wasn't being productive, because I couldn't play my sport, that put me in better condition, that made me mentally stronger, that made me work with people more. I didn't have a way of feeling superior anymore. And so I had to think of like, okay, what can I do? And eventually that became business for me instead of sport.
And what was like the first step of getting into business? Where did this idea of, transitioning from sports, getting into business come from?
I started seeing Instagram reels. Funny enough. So I saw a bunch of Instagram reels. One day, I even have a screenshot of this. I can send it to you after. One of my old friends, which I'm still like best friends with him, his name's Alberto. He sent me a reel, or I sent him a reel on Instagram, and it was like, you and your best friend when you're both rich in like 5 years or something like that, like some random ass reel. And he was like, let's start Saturday. And I was like, I already started. I set up a Shopify store. And that was my first intro into that world of business.
Yeah. And what exactly was on that Shopify store? What were you kind of trying to sell?
I believe it was, this is so stupid. It was called Celix. And it was a little thing that, like, if you have like plastic, you could seal it together. Like it would like hot wire, like close a bag or whatever.
Drop shipping.
Yeah, it was drop shipping.
Yeah.
That product.
Okay. And how did that play out? What did you spend any money on ads? How were you getting conversions, or what exactly happened in that drop shipping store for you?
No ads, all organic, but it gave me belief, I think. It gave me belief that I can obsess over it and get better and better and better and better. Because when I first started, none of the videos went viral, nothing happened. Eventually, I actually had 2 videos go like semi-viral, right? Okay. So like one of them got like 150K, one of them got like 40K or something like that. So not like viral, but like a decent amount of views. And so that gave me hope of, even though I hadn't made my first dollar, at least I had like some kind of proof of concept of like, you can get attention online, you can make sales online. And start quick.
How many sales did you make off those 2 videos? Or zero? Really?
They went viral after I took down the store. After I took it down, that's when they started getting views.
Okay, that makes sense. So having that failed dropshipping store, what did you do next that kind of, was able to help you get to that next level and actually start to see some real progress, some real money?
It was starting an SMMA. That's what they called it. An SMMA, marketing agency, whatever you want to call it. That was my next kind of progression, because I realized I am very much like the downside for me in e-com, drop shipping, whatever, is that I'm good at speaking to people and I'm good at communication, and I couldn't leverage that with the e-commerce and everything else. And so that's when I started going into more of the SMMA space, and I even bought a course, and that was like my first kind of intro into it, if you will. And then eventually that kind of took off immediately. I started getting a bunch of free trial clients from the very, very beginning to build up case studies, reputation, etc. And then eventually I monetized it. Okay.
And getting into the monetization part of the SMMA, what were you kind of making doing that? How long did you do that? Get a little deeper into that.
My highest month was 36K, and that was my last month before it collapsed, and then I shut it down.
Okay. And what was the reason that it collapsed and you shut it down?
I was a high school kid who had 4 hours a day to take meetings, still in high school in class. And because of the model I was doing, which involved a lot of appointment setters and stuff like that, 4 hours a day, I just could not manage all of them. And every time I got a new client, I had to bring on like another 5 appointment setters, which I just did not have time to constantly be managing this. Number one, because of the time, and number two, just skill set wise. Like I was not a good enough leader back then. Now I can do it, and I can manage teams with hundreds of reps, but back then I just couldn't.
Yeah. So were you selling like marketing services, or what exactly were you selling? And so the fulfillment part was the problem, but like what exactly were you selling that you couldn't fulfill on?
Yeah. So these were creators that were fitness coaches with 100,000 followers, for example. But one thing I realized is even though they had all these followers, they only were making like $5,000 a month. They were completely broke, dead broke. Mm-hmm. And so what I would do is I would take in appointment setters onto the team, and I would build the scripts and everything else. And then they would be reactivating people from the DMs. They would be DMing people who were commenting on posts. They would be doing polls on the stories and then getting leads through there. Like they would do everything to be able to monetize this creator's audience.
Okay.
Like growth operating before growth operating was the thing. Basically.
Okay. So you were basically partnering with influencers, bringing in a setting team, and then you were the one closing the calls.
Exactly. Or they would close it, or I'd bring in an external closer, depending on.
Okay. That makes sense. And where did those systems break where it made you want to say, hey, this just isn't the best fit for me, and hey, I'm going to have to shut this down and pivot?
I couldn't manage the quantity of setters. Like if I were to run that offer right now, I'd fucking crush it. And everybody that's talking about growth operating and all this bullshit, like they'd be in the dust. But back then I just didn't have that skill set. I just couldn't. Like I couldn't manage that many appointment setters at the same time with 4 hours of time that I could be on meetings outside of school. Like it just wasn't feasible. It wasn't viable.
Yeah. And you said if you were on that offer as of today, you'd crush it. What would you have done differently that you didn't do back then?
Number one, I'd have a lot more time, so I could actually put in the time to manage the teams. Number two, I'd create much better systems for systematizing operations, how to systematize onboarding, like building SOPs, stuff like that. So the time I would spend on calls with the clients, on calls with the DM setters would be like drastically less because most of it could be automated. So I think that'd be massive. Number two is just understanding leadership styles and how to actually manage a team. Because different people have different personalities. Some people, you push them and you have to push them and push them and push them and push them, and you push them to greatness. Other people, you have to like give them a vision of what they can achieve, and then they'll work towards it. Like people think differently psychologically, and you have to be able to identify that and then use that to your advantage. I didn't know that back then.
That makes sense. So shutting down the SMMA, what did you do next that kind of was in the business space and you've seen some success in?
That's when I got recruited into 7th Level in 5,000 company with Jeremy Miner.
Okay. And talk about that recruitment process, you know, your first day of being on that team, going and, you know, working with them. And yeah, just talk about the recruitment process and, you know, the start of being with.
I'll even go back a second. Before I got recruited into 7th Level, I realized sales was my thing. Like I didn't like it. In fact, I hated it and I still do, but I was very good at it. And so I went into the high ticket sales industry and I worked on 2 separate offers with like 2 of my buddies. And that's kind of, I just like blew everybody out of the water and just kind of did things that like nobody had ever done before. And so then that's why I ended up getting recruited in 7th Level in the first place.
Yeah. And you said they were the ones to kind of reach out to you. Did he ever tell you how he figured out where, like how he found you and what made him want to?
I paid for an event to go to 7th Level. I paid for one of Jeremy's events. I went in person, etc. And then that's when I met Yash. Yash actually sold me that ticket. And now he's my business partner, which is funny. But while we were in person, that's when I was on that other offer with one of my buddies before I went to 7th Level. And like, it was an offer where this dude just had like followers, but like no monetization, nothing. His entire brand was like, oh, we give everything away for free. That was his entire brand. And I was like, bro, let's do something here. And so me and one of my buddies, Tony, we went on the offer. And in the first 30 days, we collected about like $120,000, $130,000 of like without a product of pre-sales. So without a product or service to pitch, and to people who were only following this guy because he gave things away for free. And we are now convincing them to pay a lot more than free.
Yeah. And going to that Jeremy Miner event, what made you want to say, hey, I would like, what did you see and what made you, you know, submit your information? And on that sales call that you got sold, what was it that made you say, hey, this is an event that I just have to be at?
It honestly wasn't. Like, I'm a very easy sell. Like, I probably spent too much money. But like, it wasn't for Jeremy, it was for Yash.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Yash was like a role model for me. Like at that point, when he was 18, he was already making $100,000 a month in straight commissions when he was 18 years old. He didn't grow up with money whatsoever. Not the best childhood, but made the most of it. And like, he was kind of a person to look up to for me.
Okay.
When he was 16, he was making $50,000 a month. And so I kind of saw that. And then it was like, I'm going to follow. I'm just going to do whatever he says. Like, yeah, okay, I'm going to just do whatever he says. I'm not going to think about it. So I went to the event. Eventually, he told me to come to 7th Level. And I was like, cool. And I'll move into there. Like, I decided to move to Arizona, which is a story in itself because that was a pretty crazy one. But that's kind of like how the journey commenced from there.
Yeah. Well, like, how much was the ticket to the event? And like, what did you get out of the event?
It was $5,000. Yeah, I didn't really like learn a lot of things that I implemented, but it was just meeting people.
So more of like the network and the people that were in the room.
Exactly, because I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for that. I didn't learn a lot in terms of skill set, but in terms of everything else, that helped a ton.
That makes sense. And being in that, going to that event, getting recruited, talk about moving to Arizona and actually working on Jeremy Miner's team, being around such skilled people. What did that kind of do for you?
Yeah, this was a pretty funny story. So I asked my parents briefly, I was like, and I didn't want to give too much information away. So I was like, hey guys, like, can I potentially like move out before I'm 18? And they basically gave me a big old fuck no. And I was like, okay. And so when we got back, because I was in Bali for like a month there, when we got back to the States, I told my mom, I was like, okay, I'm going to go to Arizona for like 3 days. I'm just going to like see the office, have an in-person client over there, blah, blah, blah. She was like, cool. And I bought a one-way ticket. And on my way out of the door, kid you not, I'm walking out. I open the door. She taps me on the shoulder. She goes like, oh, Andres, like, when are you coming back? And I was like my hands are like tied up. Like, I'll tell you when I get in the Uber. And then I didn't see her for 3 months after that.
Really?
My first week in Arizona, I got a dog, I got a lease, and I was, from that moment, a grown man, essentially.
Yeah. And you were 16 at the time when you moved out to Arizona?
16, yep.
Man, how were you able to get a lease at 16?
So there's a lot of loopholes that you have to figure out. This is not legal advice, by the way, guys, but there's a lot of loopholes I had to figure out to drop out of high school, to get a lease, like all of it.
Yeah. So moving out to Arizona, going and working with Jeremy Minor, what was the experience like?
I have to pick very careful words here. It gave me the tools to be able to make the most of myself. I can't say I really learned much from anybody there except for Yash, but it gave me tools, as in there was a CRM with a shit ton of leads. There was a creator with a lot of followers. And so I got to figure out, how can I make money from all of this? How can I make the money? So it gave me tools to practice on, almost like in a video game, you have like a sandbox mode where you can like get infinite levels and stuff. That's how it felt, where I could try stuff out. There was leads, there was everything else. And then I could learn under Yash. And that's what I would say my experience at 7th level was, essentially. Because then me having that, I worked harder than anybody in the company. Anybody there will tell you this to this day. There was not a single person in that entire company that worked harder than me, except for maybe Yash. No, but not a single person. And so outworking everybody else, developing my skill set more than everybody else, which part of that was the work ethic. And just creating undeniable competence and producing results because of it.
And when you moved out there, what were like some of the numbers looking like when you were closing for Jeremy Minor? How much were you kind of making a month? What did that kind of look like?
My last month, I think total income, I made around like 35K or something like that.
35K.
It wasn't crazy, but also because another story, Yash basically came to me once and he was like, and this was like 2 months before leaving, he was like, bro, we're not going to hit KPI like for the company. Like, it's behind. We need to like act soon, like now. And so we put an entire plan together. And it was like me and him, we're going to go to war. I'm just going to set calls for him. I'm going to be working 18 hours a day. He's going to do the exact same thing. We're going to manage the entire team, train the entire team, and take calls ourselves the entire day, 7 days a week. And we did it. And then that was the last month in the company where I collected more than the rest of the team combined, and just blew everybody out of the water, essentially. Yeah.
And what do you think was the biggest thing that set you apart from the other closers that were in the company? Because the 7th level, they're pretty known in the sales space. So you would think that most of their closers are very, very talented. So what do you think? What do you think? What do you think that you did differently? What was like something that, hey, this is why Andres had this result, and this is why the other team had this result?
Good question. I think mental toughness was the biggest factor. I would even sometimes because I had a penthouse over there, I would even let sometimes people come and stay with me. Like whenever they visited the office, whatever, just completely for free. And they'd always think I was batshit crazy. Because I would literally I would optimize my day, not for productivity, but literally for pain. I would wake up at 4:30 a.m. every day, or 4 a.m., depending on the day. I would time myself. Within 90 seconds, I had to get in the cold plunge. And it's not a cold plunge like in my unit. Like, you had to go up the stairs to the rooftop where it's 40 degrees Fahrenheit outside, get in a 35-degree cold plunge, and I'd be in there for 5 to 10 minutes. And I had to do it within 90 seconds of waking up. I had a timer.
Yeah.
And this is one thing a lot of people don't understand, I think. And there's a lot of people online who are like, oh, cold plunging doesn't make you money, this and this and that. It's not about the money. It's about how it develops you as a person. Yeah. Because the role of a man isn't his feelings. isn't to feel pleasure or happiness. It's to be productive.
Mm.
Because when you start focusing on your feelings, on what you feel and your emotions, then yeah, why the fuck would you get in a cold plunge at 4:30 a.m., 90 seconds after waking up? Why would you? Why wouldn't you just go out and drink or go out and party or do drugs? That's how you feel. So you feel.
Yeah.
But if you focus on productivity, it's a completely different ballgame. Because if you think about it from this perspective, like every entrepreneur, every successful person, doesn't even have to be in business, will have to go through hard things to succeed. And that's why it's hard. And that's why it's called success in the first place. Because when everybody else wants to quit, if you just don't quit and you go one step further, it's last man standing. Last man standing is success. People don't get that. That is success. It's last man standing. That's the game. It's the fucking guy on the top of the hill or whatever they call it. King of the hill or whatever the bullshit it is. That's literally success. And so in order to get to the top, it's not a matter of being stronger or smarter. It's just a matter of being able to push through when nobody else does.
That makes sense.
And that comes from mental toughness. Because I'll put it this way. If you have one guy who every single day is just, they feel like eating some bad food for them, and now they get a burger and fries. They know they got to work out, but they don't feel like it, so they don't. They decide they want to jerk off because they feel like it. They go hang out with people who they know make their life worse because they feel like it. And then all of a sudden, they have the worst day of their life. Everything feels like shit. Everything's falling apart in their business. They just lost a shit ton of money. This guy decided to leave the company. This guy did this thing. This girlfriend broke up with you or whatever. Is that guy going to push through to the next day? Hell no.
Yeah.
Because he's been conditioned to make decisions based on what he feels, his emotion in that moment. But if you have another guy who every single day, he wakes up at 4 a.m., he does a cold plunge, even though he doesn't want to, and it's the last thing he would possibly fathom wanting to do. And he works 18 hours a day, 7 days a week for months on end, even though he doesn't want to. And he can go months on end without talking to anybody, being completely lonely, developing his own mental strength. And he can keep up his relationship with his parents and everybody else, even when it's hard. Is that guy going to push through to the next day when it's difficult? Fuck yeah, he is. Because that's what he does every single day.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what differentiated me the most from everybody else at 7th level, me and Yash, was our mental strength. The fact that I would have to force other people in the company to wake up earlier because they were being fucking lazy. And not lazy as in lazy for the average person, lazy as in for the goals that I'd set for myself and for the company and what they wanted to achieve. They would get to the office at 6:30 a.m., get there at 5:30. Why not? That's the difference. So there's like mediocre, then there's good. Good is a lot of the people at 7th level. And then there's great and pushing boundaries and pushing what's actually possible.
Yeah.
And that's very few people. I did something that nobody's ever done in the company before. I collected more than the rest of the team combined. Me and Yash are the only two people ever to do that. He did that with the closing department. I did that with the setting department.
Okay. That's pretty dope, man. So going from that and then leaving 7th level, talk about what you're doing now, the transition, and what exactly is your life looking like now? How are you making money? What are you doing now?
Yeah. So at 7th level, Yash started with them when they were at like $600,000 a month, I believe, cash collected. And before we left, their peak month was $3.5 million. And so we looked at the numbers and we were like, well, fuck, we're pretty good at this. And so now we decided we're doing a consulting business and we work with clients between like 300K a month, like $1 million a month. It's kind of like our ideal avatar, a couple of smaller ones. If they have like a lot of potential and they're like really wanting to get after it. And we'll go into the offer, we'll sell it ourselves, we'll build out the systems exactly like we did at 7th level, right? And then we'll recruit, manage, and train a team inside. That's what we did at 7th level. We did the recruiting, we did the managing, we did the training, and we built the teams. And so that's basically what we do for companies now. And then we get a rev share of their entire company. That's basically how we operate. I don't believe in the sales managers or fractional sales managers who tell you do this, do this, do that. And they've never taken a fucking sales call in the entire offer in their life. That's stupid to me. And so we'll go into the offer and do it ourselves because we actually know what we're doing from that point, and then we can build a team and train them because we actually have context.
Yeah. So you were well, let's take a step back real quick. You were selling sales training for Jeremy Minor.
Yeah.
Talk about, let's get into some tactical things. Like, getting on those calls with people, you know, how those, basically what I want to know is like, how did those calls go? Objection handling, you know, because when you're selling to salespeople, it's a lot different than just selling to a normal person. So, let's go through some like tactical things and walk through some of those sales calls, start to end. Like, what did that kind of look like?
Is something in specific or just generally speaking?
No. So like, basically break down your process of selling Jeremy Miner's offer.
Yeah. So setting and closing, they have both, right?
Yeah.
The way I go about setting is from the very beginning. It depends, obviously, if they booked in for like a triage call or if it was an outbound lead. But regardless, you take them through some kind of process to figure out like the most important steps, which is like, what do they want to work on? Number one. Mm-hmm. So very tactical questions, called a tangible and experience. A tangible is like, okay, man, like, what do you feel like you'd have to improve on in terms of like your skill set in order to like make more sales, help more people, on that jazz? Oh, well, I need to get better at objection handling. I need to get better at my tonality, whatever it is. And then it's like, okay, and like, what have you seen that makes you feel like you're not good at objection handling? What have you seen that makes you feel like your tonality, I guess, isn't perfect? And whenever you ask a question like that, they give you an experience. The difference is a tangible is in the future. I want this. An experience is in the past. I'm not good at this. And so they tell me I want to get better at objection handling. Is that a tangible or an experience? It's tangible. So I need to flip it to a negative experience. So like, what have you seen that makes you feel like you're not good at objection handling? Oh, well, like right now I got to think about objections. I can't overcome them. That's step one. What's the overarching problem that we're solving for? Step two, I would make them role play. So I'd make them pretend that they were trying to sell me and I was the prospect. Reason I did that was two things. Number one, it makes them feel nervous. So it removes the sales pressure of you trying to sell them, because now they feel like they're trying to sell you. And so like flip it on them. And number two, because it would essentially help me analyze like, what do they actually need to work on that's causing the problem? Somebody tells me I'm losing sales to think about objections. Is a think about it objection the problem? Or is their entire discovery process that's causing them to think about it the objection the problem in the first place?
And what would you say, out of most of the time you got on the calls and talked to prospects, what was mainly the problem if they were getting that objection that I need to think about it?
I need to think about it. It would usually be a lack of urgency, which would come from a lack of emotional contrast, which is kind of like the emotional contrast. That's like the third step in like our framework that Yash and I use and like kind of teach to everybody else.
Okay. And how would you build on that emotional contrast?
So like, emotional contrast, it's like, if you think about it from a psychological perspective, the bigger the gap between somebody's dream state versus where they are now or future consequence, cost of inaction, the bigger that gap is, the more urgency they feel to make a change. Okay. So there's two steps to preventing a think about it objection. Number one, it's a shift in your identity. And number two, it's that emotional contrast. So shifting your identity would be like, let's say I was selling sales training to a salesperson. It's like, okay, man. And like Eugene, like before you and I were speaking, like, were you, I guess, like out there looking for other ways to like develop your skill sets? So like you could stop losing the money to objections, or like, what were you actually doing about that? It's like, oh no, like I wasn't doing anything. And then it's like, okay, what actually prevented you though? You seem like a smart guy. Oh, well, it was a lot of money, or it was this. My partner said no. I couldn't afford it. I just bought a house, whatever it is. You're getting the objection before you even pitch to pre-handle it. Now, step two of changing the identity is you have to understand every objection is internal, but a prospect doesn't want to blame it on themselves, so they're always going to externalize it. I don't have money is an external objection. It's not internal. So we have to flip it. And so I'd be like, well, can I make a suggestion, Eugene? They'd be like, yeah. And it's like, because I think about it this way, like, I'm a big believer in the saying, if there's a will, there's a way. So when I was 16 years old, for example, and I first invested into myself to develop the skill sets to like be where I am now, I went begging. My neighbors, my parents, I was just cutting grass. I was doing everything I could possibly do. Because I'm a big believer in like, if there's a will, there's a way. So my question to you, man, like, isn't did you have the money or did you not have it? It's like, what prevented you from actually having the will to go and find it though? And you can be real with me. And then I pause. And if they tried answering it too quickly, but I could tell they didn't have a good answer, I'd be like, no, like pause for a second, like think. I literally just say that. And they'd be like, oh, well, like I was scared it wasn't going to work, or I didn't want to put myself in a risky financial situation. That's all internal. That's an internal objection. Does that make sense? Yeah. Identity shift. And then I'll just have to reframe that. Right? So if they told me, oh, well, do you want me to role play like how to change like an identity frame? I can do it.
Yeah. So like I'll basically I'll come up with an avatar. Let's say let's just use sales training for an example.
Okay.
Basically, I'm a salesperson, so this could be like funny and just in general. And let's say that I'm the avatar. I've been in sales for 3 years. I'm at that 7 to 10K month mark, and
Yeah.
I want to go to $20,000 a month, and
Cool.
that'll be the avatar. So let's
Okay.
do a little role play.
Cool. Yeah, man. So like before you and I were speaking, like were you I guess like out there looking for other ways to like get more of that advanced training so you could like get to that 20K month goal? Or like what were you actually doing about that?
I wouldn't say I was looking for it, but as of right
Why not?
now, man, it's just like my time. It's been hard to work in sales and then look for ways to increase my knowledge in sales. It's
Okay.
just been like time, I would say.
Hey, can I make a suggestion, man?
Sure.
Because like you, me, Jeff Bezos, we all have the same 24 hours in a day,
Yeah.
right? So it's not about how much time we have, it's about how we actually use it.
Okay.
So my question to you now, man, like isn't do you have the time or do you not have the time? It's like, are you committed to finding the time to actually develop the skill set to get to the 20K a month?
Yeah. It'd be tough, but I'll have to figure out a way to find that time.
You didn't get into sales and get to 20K a month for it to be easy, did you? I hope not.
Hope not. No, I didn't, man.
Because like, let's play it out for a second, man. Like, what do you think happens if you keep thinking with the same mindset you have for the past 3 years of like thinking, I don't have the time, I can't learn the skills because of that? What do you think that looks like?
Then I'm just gonna be stuck in the same position.
Meaning what?
That I'll be stuck at 7 to 10K a month if I can't find the time.
It's not terrible, man. 10K a month, you got a little 6-figure salary, like an engineer salary. Like, why not just stay there?
That 20K a month. I think that's really where your life changes. 7 to 10K
Why is
after
that?
taxes isn't much, but
Okay.
that 20K a month, you're bringing in anywhere from 12 to 15 take home. You can do a lot with that, I would say.
Gotcha. So are you actually committed to like changing that old way of thinking of like thinking you don't have the time and so not acquiring the skill set?
Yeah, I think I'd be pretty
You
committed
think so
to
or you are, man? Big difference.
that. Man, I am committed to that.
Okay, because I think I have the time is basically the same as I think I don't have money. Like it's one and the same. So are you actually open then to like me holding you accountable to making that change in your mindset so you can be successful and get to the 20 grand a month?
Yeah, man. I think I'd be open to that.
Okay, and I just reframed you. So now I just move on.
Okay. So that's pretty cool, man. Just being able to communicate and really the best thing I think I was picking up on that is pushing on what they're saying, not allowing them to give you a BS answer, and really not being afraid to speak and be the expert, because it's super dope to see someone very young be able to do that, because most of the time you're going to be getting on the calls with prospects that are a lot older than you.
Yeah.
And
these people would be like 60 years old even sometimes.
Sometimes some people are going to take it the wrong way, but the people that really want to change, they're going to accept that and realize, hey, man, this fucking kid's fucking kid, but he's fucking speaking the truth. Like,
but the other thing is like nobody would ever really take it the wrong way because it depends on your delivery. Like I've never had somebody get upset at me for that because of the delivery of it. Because the other thing is like you give me those answers of like, yeah, I think I am. But you would never give me that answer in a real sales call, because as soon as you told me I think or like maybe in the first 2 minutes of a sales call, I would have already called it out and reframed you around why you're saying that.
Okay. That's
right?
good.
Because like if you told me like, oh, I think I'm committed to changing it, I'd be like, well, can I make a suggestion, man? It's like, you think or you are? Because the biggest issue people have is like, there's a saying, if there's a will, there's a way. If you want something bad enough, you will do what it takes to achieve it. Because if you have two people and one of them is always like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it. I'm doing it right now. I'm succeeding. And the other person's like, oh, I think I want to do this. I think I'm going to do this. Who do you think is going to be more successful? The thinker or the doer?
The doer, the person that's committed to the actions.
Yeah, because you being a thinker, could that be the reason we're having this conversation? Only making 7-10 grand a month?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And then I move on. Like you do that very, very early on, because then when we get to that point, I would never get that answer.
Yeah. So What were like the ticket sizes of the sales coaching that you were selling for Jeremy Miner? You know, what was like your tiers? What was your packages, programs? Go through all of that.
Between all the way down to $1,000, all the way up to 16 grand, actually all the way up to 30 grand. I only sold the 16 grand and the 30 grand. That's it.
Okay. And if you are allowed to share, what was like your splits on those packages there? Was it the standard 10%? Was there a tier to get up, or what exactly did those look like?
It's tiered. I can say this because it's already on the internet, but it's tiered between 10% up to like 14%.
Okay, that makes sense. So now, you know, leaving Jeremy Miner's team, doing your own thing, you're working with a lot of different companies. What do you feel like is one of the easier offers to sell, and what do you feel like is one of the harder offers to sell?
Well, I think that's not a bad question. I think it's the wrong question. Because if you're focused on succeeding long term, it shouldn't be about what the easiest offer is. It should be about the offer that develops you the most. Because, like, I'll give you an example. Fitness, hard offer to sell. You have to have a certain kind of person you need to really learn. But it's one of the offers that will develop you the most, the best. Selling a $75,000 package, which we have a client who sells $75,000 PIFs for a program, it'll pay you a lot of commission. You'll make a lot of money, but it doesn't develop you as much. So I think the right question is like, what offers will develop you the most and put you in the best position? And I think those are like fitness offers. Honestly, any offer that has a lot of leads where you can do a lot of outbound dials. 7th level, that was a pretty good offer for developing skill set because they have a ton of leads that you can call. You can be on conversations all day.
That makes sense. So talk about training sales reps. You know, learning the skill of sales is one thing. Talk about the process to training a brand new sales rep that has never been in sales at all. Like, let's give them, for an example, let's pretend like I've never been in sales a day in my life. How would you go about training a sales rep to get to a point where they're productive, basically?
This is really funny because yesterday I recorded a YouTube video with one of my old buddies, like old high school buddies or whatever. His name's Isaac. No business experience, no sales experience, nothing. And the video was like making a high school kid his first $500 online in 24 hours. And I break that all down. But essentially the simple process of it is like, are you saying how to learn sales from the beginning, essentially?
Yeah. Like, how would you take this, for an example, that your friend, what did you do to get him started in learning? Like, I know it's not something you learn in one day. Like, you got to take time.
He learned it in like an hour. He literally learned it in an hour. That's what he ended up making. He didn't make 500. He ended up making 400 in the 24 hours. It was really in like 3 hours of work because I kicked him out. But before that, the way I taught it to him is I gave him a script and I told him, look, go through this entire script. I made him write it down 20 times he wrote it down on this notebook. So like that's his handwriting, but just like wrote it down a shit ton of times, blah, blah, blah. So write it 20 times from start to finish. I did a couple role plays with him, me pretending to be the prospect, him doing it back. And then I did one live outbound dial in front of him and did one call and set it to a sales call. And then he just got on the dialer and just started doing it. Just a lot of reps. That's it. You need a good process, a good framework that's simple, it's repeatable, and it works in many situations, many industries. That's the first step, which I taught it to him. Number 2, you need to get a lot of repetition writing it down because that ingrains it in your brain. The way I think of it, like when I used to be a semi-pro soccer player, I never thought in the moment about how am I going to move my leg right here? How am I going to move my foot? How am I going to turn my body, my positioning? I never thought about it consciously. I would see the ball coming and I would subconsciously know like, okay, I got to fake in and I got to rotate my body. Like it was just natural because it was so instinctual from doing so much practice and repetition over and over and over again that when I'm in the actual game, I just do what I've been practicing. Sales is the exact same way. Instead of having a script and then trying to read it off the script, and then you start stumbling and you don't know where to take it, they say something you didn't expect, now you're fucked. Instead of doing that, you have a script, you have a framework, you have a process, and you just write it over and over and over again to ingrain it in your brain. Because then when it comes up in an actual call, you say the next line, but you're not thinking about what you're going to say next. You're focused on the prospect, on what they're saying. And if you focus on what they're saying, you can hear the slight shifts in their tonality. You can see their body language turn from like being like this to like leaning out a little bit, and you know they feel more fear, right? Or you can feel them start twitching. You can see them start doing what's called a self-hug in psychology, where if you touch yourself, it's to provide self-comfort in psychology.
Mhm.
They'll like put their arm on their shoulder. They'll like do this or whatever it is. You start reading that stuff subconsciously because you're putting your attention towards it rather than focusing on your next question. So that's the second step. Write your script. Third step is you just got to go make dials. You just got to work. You got to do repetition because that'll always improve you more than anything else. You write your script and then you just work and you do dials, you get repetitions, you get really, really good. And then obviously the fourth step I would say is you need to have some kind of mentor or something to review your conversations, review your calls, tell you where to get better, what to change, etc. That's what I would say. Framework.
Yeah. And let's talk about sales frameworks because there's a lot of different frameworks out there. I know Jeremy Miner teaches the NEPQ framework. Do you use that, or do you guys kind of? I know you mentioned that you may have like a different framework that you use. Like, let's talk about sales frameworks.
Yeah, I branched out from NEPQ, so I don't really use NEPQ. Reason why, like, I don't think it makes a big difference, like what framework you use. I think it's just about having a framework. And obviously, I wouldn't go like a Grant Cardone style or anything like that. Just not my thing. I think like straight line selling from like Jordan Belfort, you can use that. Like there's a couple different frameworks that are like pretty decent. I think it's just more about having a decent framework and then just getting a shit ton of repetition with that one framework. The difference between mine and Jeremy is that I focus a lot more on identity framing, which I notice works a lot better, especially because most of the people I'm selling to are younger and like in business, entrepreneurs and stuff. And so rather than having a framework that's made for lawyers and real estate agents and insurance sales reps and high ticket and this and cars and everything else, and you're trying to make one framework for everything, I just made a framework that's more specific for like high ticket sales, which includes.
So break down your framework for me, like in the way that would make the most sense simply. Like I know it's going to be hard to go through everything, but like break it down like boom, boom, boom. This is the framework that I use. This is step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Break it down in that way.
Very comprehensively, the first stage is getting logical certainty, logical buy-in, right? And so like every decision is made on emotion and justified with logic. So we need to create that justification. And so the first step is we're figuring out like what do they need to work on at a high level. We're figuring out like what are they doing for that thing now. So if they're like, oh, I want to get better at handling objections. Okay, how are you handling your objections now? How long have you been doing that for? What caused you to use like that approach? You see it online or was it like a friend or what? Right? We're uncovering the situation and then we go into more of like a problem analysis. Right? And so like, for example, if somebody is looking into starting an e-com store, but they have a 9-to-5 job and it's like, okay, man, I mean like being an engineer, like it's not terrible. Like was even looking into like a possible like e-com store. Oh, well, I want to make money more passively so I have more time back. What have you seen that makes you feel like you don't have time? Oh, well, I can only hang out with my girlfriend 2 or 3 hours a day. How long has that been going on for? Has that an impact on you like personally though? And you start probing into that. And that'll give you the logical certainty of I have this problem. Here are the hours that I can't spend with this person. Here's how it impacts my life. It's very logical, right? From there, I go into switching their identity. The identity switch is like before you and I were speaking, like were you out there looking for blah, blah, blah. That's identity. From there, I go into emotional contrast and then into pitch. That's it.
Okay. That's pretty solid, man. Give some tips that you would give to someone that is trying to break into that high ticket space and they really don't have a lot of connections. They have maybe some type of sales skills, but they don't have any connections that could get them right into an offer. What steps would you do? What steps would you take to kind of break into that high ticket space?
You just got to do it. Like you literally just got to go out there and find it. Like Eugene, for example, do what he did. If you go on a podcast with somebody like me and you're like, yo, do you have an offer? I work hard. This is a little bit about me, blah, blah, blah. Can I get an offer? I'm not going to say no. You have some level of resilience, some level of dedication. You know what you want and you do what it takes to get there. And that's something that anybody in a high level position is going to respect. Now, if you sit back wondering, oh, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? But you don't actually do anything. Yeah, of course something's going to happen. Why would it?
It's all about taking steps to get to where you want to go.
Exactly. Me telling a strategy is like relatively useless because then a bunch of people start doing the strategy and then it doesn't work anymore and you need a new one. But the ultimate strategy behind all those strategies is just actually caring, just commitment. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to find a fucking way and I'm going to do it.
Not being afraid to take shots and look stupid is one of the biggest things that I think could really change a lot of people's lives is being able to deal with rejection and not internalize it. Like you have to be able to understand that there is something that you could have done better, but just because you messed up doesn't mean you're a mess up. Like,
Exactly.
and that's one of the biggest things that I'm personally learning as myself is like, I know there was always something I could be doing better, but just because I didn't do it doesn't mean that I'm messed up. I just got to learn, got to get better. And sometimes, some things aren't meant to be, but if you keep putting those steps in front of you, keep taking shots on target. I think Alex Hormozy talks about that. With enough shots on target, you're going to hit one. Like you're going to hit one.
Exactly.
So,
I kid you not. Before I went to 7th level, I was thinking about going to work for Matt Ryder. And whenever I want to do something, I do everything I can to do it. And so like, I found his company, Sales Sniper, was old company. I don't know if he's still running it. I think they've downsized significantly, but I found every email of every person in the company, from support to tech to like individual people I knew were in the company, sales reps, like operations people, Matt himself, like everybody. And I sent an email with a Loom video attached, basically pitching myself, like a little bit of my experience, like to as many people as I could possibly find. And I got like 4 different people who somehow found a way to accept me into the company, like 4. I ended up turning it down, and then I went to the 7th level because Josh recruited me. But like, you just do what it takes. You do shit that nobody else thinks of because you just care more.
Yeah. Well, I want to get into a little bit about your business partner and how he was a mentor to you. I don't think I've heard much about him. So tell me about your business partner. Tell me about him being a mentor to you, and why did you kind of look up to him?
Yeah, he very much had that same mentality of like, do shit not just because it makes you money, do shit because it's hard. Because there's a part of your brain, there's a literal part of your brain, there's studies done on this, where every time you don't want to do something and you do it anyways, that part of your brain literally gets bigger, it grows. And every day that passes that you don't do something that you don't want to do, it shrinks. There's an actual part of your brain. I'm not making this up. And if you're constantly doing hard things, obviously it's going to be bigger. And that part of your brain is what controls willpower.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people, go ahead.
No, I think what's his name? Dr. Schuberman. I don't want to be wrong, but I think it's called your anterior cortex or something like that. I hope I didn't say that.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Exactly. And so he had that same mentality of like, just do what it takes, fucking get after it. And so he helped nurture that in me. And I kind of resonated with him in that way because that's something that nobody else really had in the company. And so, that's kind of how he was a mentor to me, like helping me develop that. Sales wise, he is a killer. Obviously made $100,000 a month in commissions when he was 18 years old. And so like, clearly he knows what he's doing. That's pretty obvious. Is there anything specific you want to know?
Off the top of my head, I don't think I can think of anything. It was just more of like, man, having the mentor just in general is going to be a beautiful thing. Having someone to look up to, that's a killer, and being in the proximity of a killer, you're just going to be the next one. So I don't think there's anything specific that I just wanted to talk about. It's just like, I don't think so. There's anything specific on that end. Well, we're coming to the end of the call, but I want to know a little bit more about you, man. I know business is your main focus, but do you do anything outside of work? What do you like to do? What do you enjoy? Like, I know business is probably your identity, but is there anything outside of business that is you as well?
There's people I care about. There's people that I love. There's no activity because I would rather work than do most things in life, right? Like I enjoy playing chess, for example, stuff like that. I do. Like that Alberto kid, he's having a party tomorrow. Like I'm going to go and just chill out for a little bit because I love him, not because I want to go to a party. Like I have an old, really good friend, Sarah. She's also hosting a party for graduation or whatever. I'll go there. There's no activity I prefer over business. None. So when you say do things outside of work that make you happy, like there's people I like being around, sure, but I don't think there's anything I'd rather do.
Yeah. And that makes sense.
Because this goes back to what I was saying earlier. If you're focused on what you feel in the moment and what you want to do, then you'll be compelled to want to party or even watch YouTube, like whatever it is. Like you'll be compelled to do things that you feel like doing, your emotion. But if you have the self-restraint emotionally to be able to do things that need to get done, and not only need to do them, but want to do the things that you know will progress you rather than wanting to do the things that you know will feel good, then that's a formula for success in the long run. So that's how I view it. So there's nothing that will logically progress me and make me more productive as much as working will. So I want to work.
Yeah. Well, man, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to hop on a call with me. It was great having a conversation with such a young killer, man. Like, I'm 21 and seeing the things that you do, seeing the mindset that you have, seeing the work ethic that you put in is very inspiring. As someone that's older than you, like you're still 17. You said you turned 18 in August.
Yeah.
Like I have almost 4 years of age on you, and I love what you're doing, and it's a beautiful thing. And I just want to congratulate you and commend you for, having this mindset, being this person at such a young age. Like, when you get to my age, Lord knows you might be driving a Bugatti, it's going to be crazy, man. But thank you for being on the call, and we're going to go ahead and finish this recording.
Sweet.